Today's kind of a special video because this is me kind of going back and reviewing what is both my first occult book and the book I recommend the most on the channel for beginners. And so this is kind of a bit of a retrospective, it's kind of an introspective video for me, I guess, because I get to review and look back at a process that, without it, this channel would not exist, nor would the channel of the person who kind of got me into occultism, Frederick Xavier. With that being said, I am Dave the Amateur Magus. On this channel I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you can find within a dusty old grimoire. If you enjoy what I do here and you want to support the channel, link in the description to the Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to videos early, Patreon exclusive content, and the Occultic Manual series, which is a monthly write-up that I aim at being more instructional than what I have here on the channel, and less unapproachable than some of the old grimoires I occasionally like to reference on the channel. If any of that sounds of interest to you, or you want to go above and beyond supporting the channel, link in the description to the Patreon, and if you are already supporting me on my Patreon, you have my thanks for your continued and ongoing support to help support the channel and keep things like this going. So, let's get into the video. What is this book? This is the book that turned me into an occultist. Before this, I was only seeing, in terms of ceremonial magic, which is what I do and what I liked, Thelema. And I have always thought of Crowley as a creepy bald man. I have never been drawn to Thelema. Thelema has never been of interest to me. It is something that I've just kind of had in my periphery, but it's not something that I really enjoy. And it's never been something that I've really felt myself really drawn to. So when I found this book, which is a full framework of self-initiation based on the works of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, I personally found myself falling a bit in love with it because I actually adore the Golden Dawn system of magic. I love drawing shapes in the air. I love having blindingly colorful visions, and I love having a lot of really colorful magical tools. I find it to be absolutely fantastic. Viewers of my channel will know that I like this book so much I put it into my ceremonial magic brick cycle video, and the reason why is because it's kind of a brick. This book is very long, and this is more of a college textbook on magic. It's kind of an entire curriculum, which is, I have gotten a lot of questions on this, to the point where the second half of this video will be actually my notes. It will be my notes and experiences with the curriculum. And so it's going to have my opinions at the end, more so than a usual review, because this is going to have a little bit of bias, but I'm not going to lie. I think lying is a sin. What does this book do really well? It is structured like a college course on initiating into the occult, specifically ceremonial magic. Each section is broken down according to represent both an element and a sephirot on the Kabbalah, which is the Tree of Life, and I am going to just kind of amend this, except for Neophyte and Portal, but those are special cases. Neophyte is the probationary grade, where it is the grade before you actually start doing the real magic. When you get to the 4 elemental grades and Portal, this is where the magic happens, quite literally. But when it gets to Neophyte, you are not really doing anything too extreme. You're kind of testing the waters to see, is this really for me? Can I commit? And all of these things. Each of these has required exercises in the forms of daily practice, unique-ish to each grade. Kinda once you get started in the elemental grades, you will notice that the extra activities are more of the differences. Now, when it comes to the actual ritual formats, they're going to be basically Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram, Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Hexagram, invoke an element, if it's the right day, invoke the planet, do the meditation, do the body and exercise, then do the middle pillar, then do a meditation, and then close out the ritual with the Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Hexagram and Lesser Banishing Ritual of the Pentagram again, and to banish anything you've invoked. That is kind of sort of what you get a lot of in this. It's very formulaic, but the formula works, and for all intents and purposes, the formula is gonna get you results. What the book doesn't do well. It's a book. It is a snapshot in time from when it was written. Certain books in the required reading have been more or less expensive over time, and newer editions of books may have content edited or removed from them that the book expects you to read. This became a problem when I was trying to do it, and the newest version of the Regardi Complete Golden Dawn didn't have a section on, I think it was tarot. So, and the other issue is that the Egyptian book that was recommended, the person, one, you couldn't find it online at the time. I believe now you can find it online, but only in physical print, so you had to pay, that book was, at the time when I bought it, $50, but then the author, I believe, died, or the book went out of print, and I've been seeing it floating around for $150. I'm gonna say that that book was not worth $150, but the books fluctuate over time, and if you are kind of a book completionist like I am, you're going to want the best copies of all of the books, which is why I bought physical copies of the Dion Fortune book, which I love, and it is a book that I've been meaning to reread. But for the most part, these different books are going to change in price, and they're going to fluctuate, and newer editions are not going to have, they might not have everything you need and you are expected to read as part of this book, because it's a book. It's a snapshot in time, and it is a snapshot from a very good moment in the occult world. It is a very good moment. The book also takes a very hard stance as being in the psychological paradigm. I don't fully subscribe to the psychological paradigm anymore, but this is my own personal bias talking. This book very much is a self-development, and it takes a hardline stance into everything is in the mind. All of the magic is in the mind. You are just kind of getting your subconscious to activate, and it's very much you are using your subconscious to change your way of thinking and your subconscious by doing the magic. That is kind of how this works. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not my personal preference. I mean, I'm not a fan of the psychological paradigm, but I will say, despite that, still pretty good. Do I like this book? I literally had somebody, I recommended this book to somebody earlier today. So yes, this is the primary book I keep recommending as a start in ceremonial magic. I like the way it's structured. I've done the curriculum. We'll get to that. I love the start in ceremonial magic, and it provides me with a very good, here, if you want to get into ceremonial magic, pick this up and go ahead and do this, and you will become a ceremonial magician. If you follow this book to the letter, you will not be able to avoid becoming a ceremonial magician, because that's how it will reprogram you, effectively. That being said, a lot of people will point out some major criticisms, which are the grade of Theuricus, the air grade, has you go to therapy, which is difficult for some people in the modern era, because if you don't have any issues, therapists will basically just say, you don't have any problems, you don't need therapy, and then just kind of write it off, but the book insists you go to therapy for a certain amount of time. And the whole process, as written, is very long. So if you do the minimum time that the book describes, minimum time for each grade is 6 months per grade minimum. That is, if we are counting Portal's 9 months, every single grade is going to take, if you do, the entire course is going to take you, if I remember correctly, 3 years and 3 months. Which is a lot of commitment for most people. It is a lot of commitment. I personally am of the opinion that most people in the age of smartphones, TikTok, and content, which I am currently talking into a microphone to make, I realize, in the age of bite-sized consumable media, This is going to be very difficult for a lot of people. This is going to be very difficult for a lot of people, especially with chaos magic being as common as it is. But if you're going to do this, you need to commit. That's all I can really say. Personal issues with the book. The book restricts you from a lot of magical work. The book outright states you should not be doing any magical work outside of what you're instructed to in each grade. I went back and reread this section because I wanted to make sure I got that right. And he actually says, write a book on it if you need to. If you get a burning interest, go write a book on that instead of doing it. Because you're not supposed to be doing outside work. There isn't a lot of energy work in the book until Portal-ish. There's not really much in Portal, but there's more comparatively. There's also no scrying, but then at the end you're expected to, again at Portal, do a information receiving meditation, which I think would have been better if that kind of thing was explained a bit more. That said, that is at Portal, which is where all of your magical faculties should be up to snuff. And when I say energy work here, I want to be very clear. I am not counting the body of the world exercises in any of this, because the body in the world exercises, despite kind of being energy work, are not really what I think of when I think energy work. So that is why I'm saying that it doesn't have much energy work, but that's more of a problem with the Golden Dawn system of magic than it is the actual curriculum itself. That being said, I think honestly with the body and exercises, if you include those, it actually has more than the whole Golden Dawn system. So, that's an opinion as well. Rating of the book. Did it change my practice? 5 out of 5. It completely shaped how I do magic today. Do I still reference it? 5 out of 5. It doesn't go back on my shelf because I constantly find myself referencing it a bit too much. Do I recommend it? 4 out of 5. This is a book on ceremonial magic. If that isn't what you are interested in, this book is not for you. If you are interested in just using magic to manifest stuff, you can do better with, sigil magic or candle magic or chaos magic in general, or some kind of thaumaturgical book. This is purely a theurgic self-transformation book where you are working and developing on yourself using magic to self-develop. Do I wish my younger self had it? This was my first occult book, so it's kind of a non-applicable in that regard. It's kind of a non-applicable. My notes on the curriculum. You wanted the review. That is my review. 5 out of 5. I think we averaged out to like 5 or 4.75 or something, roughly average. But if you want my notes and my thoughts on each particular grade in order, this is where we get into each of my experiences with each of the grades. So if this is what you're interested in, let's get into it. My notes on the curriculum. So if you are doing this, do Neophyte as described. I often will get asked from a lot of people, hey, do I need to do X, Y, or Z? If you are doing stuff, right, you are not supposed to be doing outside stuff. Do Neophyte as described, and if you see other stuff pulling you off the curriculum, either quit or keep going and continue to ignore it. Yes, this includes during the solar adorations. Yes, this includes the Compendium of Gods. Yes, that includes reading everything. No, you are not allowed to do outside magic during this grade in particular. This grade is a test of willpower and focus to make sure you actually finish the rest of the curriculum without slacking off or coming up with excuses. The Neophyte dailies take literally 10 minutes, not including the meditation. And if you can't do these, there is no hope of you doing the more intense grades. God help you. If you can't find 10 minutes to do the Neophyte grade, there is no way you're going to be able to do the potentially hour-long rituals of Portal. Okay? I often will see a lot of people be like, oh, wait, why can't I do outside magic? Am I allowed to do X, Y, or Z during the grade system? And sometimes I will say yes, sometimes I will say no. Typically, I have a rule for people who I recommend to do this book. I have rules for what you are allowed and are not allowed to do. But in Neophyte, if you are doing this book and you are trying to follow this book as closely as possible, when you are in Neophyte, you are doing the Neophyte grade and nothing else. And the reason is because you are... It is a test of willpower and focus to make sure you can actually finish the rest of the curriculum, but it is also a cleaning the vessel. You are becoming a blank slate for the process to magically clean you out as best it can. Now, depending on if you were working with, say, demons or other malevolent chthonic entities, you might need to do a little bit more to cleanse yourself, but then start the Neophyte grade. But that's beyond the scope of this video. Zelator is the first and potentially most difficult grade. You are working exclusively with the element of Earth, and if you weren't hiding the fine details of your practice, start now. So, that is the grade sign of the Zelator. And a lot of people, when they see that, their mind goes places. Their mind goes places. We're going to ignore all of the fine details about that, but this is where the Earth Elementals will change your foundations. This typically results in foundations being rebuilt in there in order to actually finish the entire curriculum. So, funny story. When I was doing the Zelator grade, is when I got my first real car. And I knew it was a weird synchronistic thing because the car was dark green. It was the same dark green color I had been visualizing to invoke the element of Earth. Also during Zelator, I also got a new job that is the job that... It's the IT job. Some people will know I work an IT job. And that is the job that I got during Zelator. And that job has been absolutely wonderful. My entire ability to do the curriculum ended up coming as a result of weird synchronicities that occurred as part of this grade. Now, I will also mention that every aspect of your life has the potential to change, starting with this grade. So, one of the things I noticed when I was doing the curriculum was that my voice would change. I have a very powerful voice, my voice is very distinct, and I have quite a lot of power behind my voice. And when I was doing the meditations and I was doing the invocations, I found that my voice was very slow, very deliberate, and sometimes I would not even speak and I would just let other people speak, and I would just kind of allow them to continue going, as that's kind of where the conversation went, and it was much more of a deliberate, precise thing. Now, I will say, this grade is where it introduces geomancy. I am going to tell you, to make this grade less boring, do more geomancy than is recommended. If you were to get more into geomancy in this grade, it would probably help alleviate some of the issues that a lot of people have with this and the next grade in particular. This grade in particular, I find that the biggest issues is that it causes health concerns to be boiled up to the surface so you can deal with them. Like, if your diet is an issue, you start to have a healthier diet, you start to exercise more, you naturally want to. And, you know, I have talked to people who are doing this grade system, and when they start, they got into Zelator and they start having a bunch of health problems that they need to correct, and then they panic a little bit because, like, oh no, the magic is causing my health problems. Well, no, the magic is pulling the health problems to the surface so you can deal with them before they become a problem. Because there are two things that are foundational to everyone. That is their health and their finance, which is the ability to keep yourself healthy, right? If you don't have the right health, if your health is failing, you can't practice, you know, ceremonial magic doesn't matter if you're dying of, like, if you're bedridden and you can't do anything. Your finances, if you can't afford to exist in the world, you're not going to be able to do the ceremonial magic, because ceremonial magic is expensive. It is one of the most expensive forms of magic you can potentially get into. So, that is where the Zelator grade begins. I will say, Zelator, in my personal experience, Zelator, I didn't have many problems with, but I know some people have more issues with it than others. In my astrology chart, I have a lot of Earth in my astrology chart. My astrology chart is basically Earth and fire, primarily fire, less so Earth, and then a little bit of air just sprinkled in just to keep me from, underthinking. But for the most part, Zelator was not that difficult. I had a lot of crazy foundational shifts, and honestly, I look back at Zelator very fondly. Less so Theuricus. Theuricus is the most difficult for the knowledge hounds of the occult world. Now, I am not one of the people who gets into the occult for knowledge of how things really work. I'm not in the occult for, oh, I want to know the truest truths and the highest secrets and the secret knowledge, and I'm not that kind of person. I want to know how things work so I can put things together to make life better, right? I am approaching this less from a scientific perspective and more of an engineering perspective. That is why my flagship series on this channel is called Mechanical Magic, because I talk about magical mechanics. Theuricus is difficult. You will find that you will begin to think a lot. Your thought process will go all over the place, and you will need to tame your thoughts, or you will have the worst case of ADHD possible. You begin to work with the planets, specifically the Moon and Saturn in this grade. I find that the Moon and Saturn complement each other disgustingly well in this grade. Saturn organizes you and rules over the sign of Aquarius, which you are actually invoking during this grade. And you have the Moon, who is allowing you to be more emotional while you are dealing with the least emotional element. Water and air are polar opposites in that degree. So when it comes to Theuricus, you are going through, and I noticed that my visual abilities picked up significantly in this and the next grade. More this grade, I will admit, than the next grade. And this grade feels really fast compared to last grade's glacial pace. This grade felt like it was zooming on by, and I was actually kind of surprised when it was time to switch over to the water grade. Personally, the biggest experiences here was that after I had finished the body exercises, I wanted to move to practicus. Basically, like the second I finished it. So the body and exercises, I don't know if I've explained these, are the 10 weeks you meditate on the body in a specific Kabbalistic world, which is correspondent to the element you are working on. So you are working on the body in Asaya for the Zelator, you are working in the body in Yetzira in Theuricus, body in Bria for Practicus, and then body in Atziluth for Philosophus, and then you are bringing everything together at Portal and doing the Minutus Mundi exercise. I believe that's what it's called. It's been a while. So, therapy is incorporated into the curriculum at Theuricus. You are supposed to go to a certain number of therapy appointments, and the rationale behind this is that during this grade, you are supposed to work on any of your mental disorders and mental faculties and issues that you are consciously able to pull to the surface. So if you have any, if you have trained yourself to think certain ways, like you're not depressed, but you have constantly thought to, and you've trained your brain to think pessimistically all the time, this is where you can deal with that, and therapy will help you. If you get a good therapist, it will assist you in pulling those negative mental issues to the surface. Thoughts and your ability to communicate with other people are brought to the forefront in this grade. And when I was noticing that my voice had changed, I noticed that my voice was very much faster. My voice was the fastest in this grade, and it was the least communicative. What I mean by that is, when I was talking in this grade, the voice was the way I could tell that I had gotten into the grade proper, and when my voice was starting to adapt to the element of air, my voice got faster and my words meant nothing. I was a pain to talk to because I would talk circles around somebody and I would basically say, you know, I would talk to somebody who was trying to have a real conversation with me, and then I would go on a tangent about something that didn't matter at all to the conversation. This is just something that happened, and it was really annoying. Theuricus, all things considered, I think Theuricus is not that bad. Theuricus is not that bad. When it comes to all of the requirements in Theuricus, it's generally this is where language and thoughts are kind of exemplified, and this is where you start to learn that everything is in the mind. But if you're always in your mind, nothing gets done, right? This is my least favorite grade. The Practicus grade is my least favorite grade. For most people, this grade is brutally difficult. This grade works with the elements of water and the planets Mercury and Jupiter. You will get those emotions brought to the surface whether you like it or not. Every single person I've seen go through the Practicus grade became an emotional mess to the point where it actually was a problem. I became an emotional mess to the point where it was a problem. This is the grade that made me personally absolutely detest the element of water. If you're one to try outside magic, this is the grade it's going to happen in, though. The reason why is because you're reading about more interesting magic, you're reading about a lot of crazy things, and then you end up invoking Mercury, the planetary power of magic, right? This is where the weeks really start to get flavored by the sphere you're doing the body in exercise for. So if you are doing the body in Bria for Malkuth, for example, this is going to really feel much, much more intense. When I was doing the Bonnian exercises, I started to kind of passively, but then actively attribute them to a tarot card for the week, like I was living out that tarot card. And I vividly remember the moment I was so ready to be done with the element of water. What had happened was I had just finished the body of Bria in Tippereth, and I felt like I was on top of the world because things were going well, everything was good, I was super happy, and I thought, there's no way that the body of Bria and Gavora could absolutely do anything to take my mood down. Day one, I got a call that a friend of almost 5 years had passed away. And then, when I went to go kind of, I was crestfallen and I was trying to kind of get some emotional sympathy, I was then told by the person I went to that no, they weren't actually dead because they had not published the obituary in the paper yet because they had just died that day. And then I find out that after the obituary gets published, that person then comes and apologizes to me about 3 hours too late after they had just said, no, he's not actually dead, when I got the information from my best friend at the time, and he got the information from his brother. So, yeah. So the Practicus is not my favorite grade. Practicus, a lot of my own emotional issues came to the surface. I'm not going to get too into them. A lot of them were self-inflicted. A lot of them were kind of crazy, like that story that I just mentioned. I'm trying to think. Practicus is not a grade that is easy. When you will be exposed to greater emotional heights and depths than you are comfortable with. And this is part of the reason why you have to go through the other grades first, because if I had just had that experience happen at Neophyte, I would have dipped out. And personally, this was personally a very trying time for me emotionally. It is also where I started to kind of crack. So remember when I said you will, if you're going to try outside magic, you're going to do it here? Here's why. So what ended up happening was at this point, I started doing a little bit of outside magic, and what the rules for that were, and these are the rules that if you're going to do outside magic, I recommend you don't do outside magic, but if you're going to, the outside magic I recommend you do in this curriculum is going to be only call up the spirit of the element you're working on, or spirits that correspond to the planetaries you're working on. So in the case of water, Gabriel, the Archangel Raphael, the Archangel Raphael or Michael would work here because the Mercury correspondence, and this is technically the Grade of Hode, or the Archangel of Jupiter, or scrying the elemental planes for the particular grades. That's something I recommend. And this is where I started to kind of go into magic as kind of a coping mechanism, as well as experiment and kind of add more to the workload, because that was a lot. That was a lot during that grade. Didn't say this was going to be a happy video. Philosophist. You will notice that Philosophist has much less text than the other grades. This is the grade of Fire, Venus, and Mars. This is where everything starts to come together. This is more of a fun grade. You've kind of passed the, you've kind of passed the emotional turmoil mountain that is the grade of Practicus, and you are now more coming together, and you are more solid than you have ever been. My voice starts to be more authoritative. It starts to, I started, in hindsight, I called it the voice of authority, and it is actually the voice I command and talk to spirits in. So I find myself slipping back to that. But it's also kind of unstable. This is where fiery passion starts to bubble to the surface, and you get to see the good and bad that comes with that. I was partaking in my hobbies more. I was happier than I've ever been. I got the things I thought I wanted out of magic in this grade, and then I ended up getting rid of them later on because that was a whole thing, and it ended up being a really bad breakup. So that was an issue, I find. But for the most part, this grade was not that bad. This grade was not that bad. It was kind of, it was kind of wild. Philosophus had less important details that I'm able to share than Practicus, but it's also one of those things of you kind of feel like a bit of a god. Not to be confused with Portal. This is where the magic happens. Portal's kind of the moment where you actually are kind of doing the same thing in Neophyte. And what I mean by this is Neophyte is the gateway before you get to the actual grade system. Portal is the gateway before you get to the Adeptus Minor grade. By this point, you should have changed so much that you don't recognize your old self. You in Neophyte and you in Portal should look like two completely different people. You're going to notice your thought patterns are radically changed. You're going to notice that your foundations and your situation are radically different. And you know that you did the magic to fix this, but other people might not know that, or they're just going to be confused. You've gone through the foundational shifts of Zelator. You've gone through the, mind control exercise where you're controlling your mind of Theurgus. You're going through the emotional turmoil of Practicus, and then you go to Philosophus. You feel like you're an unconquerable king, and then you get to Portal. And you reevaluate your relationship, and it's a very reflective grade, in my opinion. You reevaluate your relationships with everything. You reevaluate your relationship with the occult, the different elements, spirit, you name it, you're reevaluating it. It's a very contemplative grade, in my opinion. It's very reflective. And it's the only time I felt like I was more magically powerful was after I finished the Abramelin. Um, you work with spirit active and passive, and the sun introduces you to the opening by Watchtower. There is no need to experiment with anything in this grade, as you're basically at the capstone. You're basically there. This is the capstone and is the first step towards becoming an adept magician, specifically a minor adept. Adeptus minor, if you would. This is where you start to be on the path. Portal is where you start to learn a lot more Enochian. Portal is where he introduces you to the opening by Watchtower, but also the Rose Cross and a lot of other things. And the rituals and the power of the rituals are much more powerful in Portal, but there is more demanded of you in Portal comparatively. And when you go through the Portal grade, this is where all of the building blocks have been assembled, and you are now solidifying them into place, right? You have the air, you have the earth, you have the air, you have the water, you have the fire, and now you have the spirit. And once you have that binding agent of spirit, you become more solid, and you are able to work magic on a way that you really can't before you get here. What happens after it? The tyranny of choice kicks in almost immediately after you finish Portal. Because for once you're not constrained. When you feel it, when you feel get called, when you feel called, get in contact with your holy guardian angel. By this point, you should know when you're going to get in contact with your holy guardian angel. It probably won't be right away. If you don't feel like that call is coming to you right away, by this point, you will know if you did everything right. Go explore what you feel you should. Magic at this point is a lifestyle and not a tool for mundane things. Personally, after I finished the curriculum, I did not just jump right into going and getting my HTA. I went ahead and got familiars from the Olympic planetary spirits of the Arbitel, which you read about during the curriculum in the Practicus grade. If you did things right, you will be completely changed by the process, and your initial wants won't be what you want now. What I mean by that is, like, I think I refer to the 3 mundane reasons people get into magic. Money, power, and love. Well, by the end of Portal, you have the money, the power, and love. You might not have a lot of money, but your ability to spend it might be more than other people who make more than you. You might not have love, but you might not want love. Or maybe you got love and it's better than what you had before, right? It's one of those things where what you start wanting is not what you want at the end. This is where you go through and you end up finding out a lot about yourself in this regard. Things I'd personally add to the curriculum. Scrying the elemental tattvas after you finish the body in of the world exercises for at least 20 weeks. So the first 10 weeks of each of the body in exercises are building up the body in that particular grade, and then you are reinforcing it. And I would say reinforce it for 10 weeks, because 10 Sephiroth times 10, 10 Sephiroth, reinforcing the second half is going to be 20 weeks, right? So you spend first half building it up and second 10 weeks reinforcing it. I would recommend scrying the elemental tattvas if I was going to add something. More magical working with the elements, or some kind of optional workings for the elemental grades. I personally find that if I'm not engaging with the topic I'm learning about, I don't pick it up nearly as much. I actually feel like some of my work with the elementals was kind of lackluster until I got to the elemental grades, after I finished the elemental grades and started working with Portal. after I started doing elemental work outside of the grade system and actually working with the elementals directly, I find myself understanding them more than I did when I was doing the grade system, which I think is kind of a fault of the system, but it's one of those problems of you're trying to change yourself and you're not really trying to learn about spirits and elementals. But if you don't engage with the elemental spirits enough, I don't think you're going to understand it enough personally. This is an issue I had with a couple of things. The planetary spirits are self-explanatory enough, but even then, I felt that some of my relationships with those planets didn't actually develop to full actual relationships and understandings until actually fairly recently, like this year. And it's 2024, and I did this entire curriculum like 7-ish years ago, 8-ish years ago. So yeah. A method of manifesting things you need in case the process does something like make you lose your job before getting a new one. The process does cause stability, and short-term manifestations are a little bit helpful. Instability, I meant to say. So I have talked to people who, when they are doing the curriculum, this usually happens in practicus, have like some kind of earth-shaking issue happen, and they need something like right now to solve it, right? This is where personally I would recommend some kind of manifestation. If there was ever a second edition, hopefully like add something where maybe you just ask the archangels after the lesser managing ritual of the pentagram. Final thoughts. Without this book, I would not be an occultist. This channel would not exist. You would not be watching this video. This book is difficult, but rewarding. This book, I went back and I wanted to check something in the neophyte section. And this book actually said your study should be about 1/3 of what you do. So you should be studying 1/3, and your actual practice should be about 2/3 of your actual occult practice, right? So 1/3 study, 2/3 practice. And that kind of has affected how I view all of occultism to this day. This was my first actual occult book I practiced out of, and as such, it changed my perspective on occultism so hard I can't even remember some of the ways it did it. That was one of the ways. Focusing on practice instead of, the study is actually how this book changed my perspective. Now, I do, of course, study the occult. I do study and read books. I've done videos on books that I have never actually practiced out of too much. But that doesn't mean that I don't disvalue study. That just means I prefer to practice and learn from experience, right? The author does have a YouTube channel, which will be linked in the description of this video. If the author is watching this, would greatly appreciate a second edition. I'm sure you've had plenty of ideas for things that you'd want to improve on since it was published. I mean, that was in 2009, I believe, 2007, 2009, something like that. It's been a long time. So hopefully we end up getting a second edition at some point. But yeah. So this has finally been my opinions on the book. This is kind of what I recommend. The only other thing that I can think to add that I haven't talked about is if you're going to do this, I would recommend, if you are going to do the curriculum as written, as to the best of your ability. Maybe do more geomancy in the Earth grade, because the Earth grade is boring. The Earth grade, you feel like you're doing more. You don't feel like you're doing magic in the Earth grade. You feel like your magic is stupid in the air grade, and you don't feel like you're doing enough magic in the water grade. And then you get to the Philosophists, and then you don't care about doing magic at all. So, like, doing more magic in the occult book would probably be better. I know it's about self-development, but that's just a me thing. So yeah, I have been Dave, the Amateur Magus. This has been my thoughts and my notes on doing the Kabbalah magic book. Link in the description to the book and the author's channel. And hope everyone is having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy. Take care.